Among the most treasured items on display in my family's home is the landing card, acquired by my grandfather in 1923, allowing him to disembark from the ship that brought him to Canada from Russia by way of an unforeseen week-long stopover in Southampton, England. Most of the ink handwriting is faded, but we can still make out his name, Yechiel Cloth, and his age, 17. After landing in Halifax, my grandfather, accompanied by his 15-year-old brother, traveled by train to Toronto to reunite with their father, who awaited them in nearby Newmarket. As for the unforeseen stopover in Southampton, as the story goes, my grandfather and his brother miss, by one day, their ship connection to Canada. So two teenage boys, unable to speak a word of English and both deaf, succeeded in occupying themselves for a week in southern England prior to boarding the next available boat that would take them to their new world and new lives. As a first-generation Canadian on my father's side, and only second generation on my mother's, most, if not all, of my forebears journeyed to Canada from distant lands, Russia, Poland, and Argentina, not to overlook the death camps of the Holocaust. I am here today celebrating my Judaism with you because of them, because of their arduous experiences in transitioning from their lands of birth, either at the beginning of the 20th century or in the aftermath of the Shoah. Because of the challenges they face, the struggles they encountered, and the obstacles they eventually overcame, I am here. And so, in a not altogether different way, are you. I'm thinking about my grandfather's journey to Canada as I read, listen to, and learn about a single verse in this week's Torah portion, Mishpatim, meaning laws. Our Israelite ancestors, after centuries of suffering, have put Egyptian servitude behind them. They stand now before Mount Sinai in the wilderness, receiving the Torah, the teaching that will serve to guide Jewish life and the Jewish view of the world forever. And among these laws is the enduring mitzvah, that is, commandment to Israel, that continues to shape Judaism's understanding of humanity. Exodus chapter 22, verse 20, you shall not wrong or oppress a stranger, for you are strangers in the land of Egypt. The Torah commentator Rashi in 12th century France points out that should one mistreat a stranger, the target of such mistreatment can easily respond, your ancestors were strangers once too. The Talmud, great extrapolation of Jewish law compiled over centuries by the rabbis of antiquity, points out that Torah informs us 36 times regarding proper behavior towards a stranger. We are to treat the most vulnerable among us as we would want to be treated in similar circumstances. The decency of a community being measured by how it cares for its least powerful members. And Rabbi author Lawrence Kushner, in his beautiful book, 5 Cities of Refuge, writes, it would be forgivable if we, the Jewish people, permitted ourselves the solace of dwelling on our victimization in Egypt, but instead we transform it, we reshape it. Our slavery, instead of embittering us, generates an obligation to identify with the socially powerless, because we too were strangers in the land of Egypt. Along with countless others who undertook similar routes to Canada and Toronto, my grandfather, a skilled garment industry worker, soon obtained employment with the now legendary Tip Top Tailors Company and within her majestic building on the lakeshore. My grandmother, who arrived here as a 7-year-old from Poland, worked in a bakery on fabled Spadina Avenue. Together they established a home in a house that still stands in the Kensington Market neighborhood. They worked very hard, raised their children, established lifelong friendships with fellow newcomers, and gave back as best they could to the country that had welcomed them in their youth. Newcomers have built this country of Canada. Newcomers have founded enduring industries. Newcomers have endeavored to establish businesses, both modest and large, to serve the needs of Canadians while serving as a foundation stone for our economy. Newcomers are school teachers, dedicated to their role as exemplars and sources of knowledge for our youth. Newcomers are academics who add to scholarship and our understanding of the human mind, heart, and spirit. Newcomers are artists, poets, novelists, playwrights, painters, sculptors. Newcomers have established our Jewish houses of worship, learning, and socialization. Newcomers are our clergy, including my esteemed predecessors on this very bema of Holy Blossom Temple. And not to overlook a more personal connection, newcomers helped to establish Canada's strong and proud labor movement. For it was during a 1920s summertime union picnic taking place on either Toronto Island or in High Park, picnics the purpose of which, aside from providing a day of relaxation and recreation, were to bring able Jewish men and women together, that my grandparents met and shortly after began to create a life together. All of the foregoing being understood and appreciated, it is my hope that you will identify with the alarm I experience when reading or hearing of those constituencies within our good country, Canada, determined to push back against immigration and newcomers, to push back against the dreams and aspirations of those wishing to make new lives for themselves and their loved ones, while enriching our economic, social, and cultural landscape. I'm alarmed by the anti-immigrant movement, by its taint of xenophobia and all too narrow vision of our world and those with whom we share it. I'm alarmed by the notion of quotas. I'm alarmed by those who, for all purposes, aim to turn back the clock and to undo the remarkable multicultural, multi-ethnic, and multi-faith fabric of our country, fearlessly taken up by Canada's Prime Minister of my youth, Pierre Elliott Trudeau. Notwithstanding the ravages to our country's economy rendered by way of the pandemic, notwithstanding the grave concern pertaining to the appearance of yet another strain of the virus, notwithstanding the public health measures that must be considered with regard to welcoming visitors to Canada from foreign lands, and of course, notwithstanding the terrible events that unfolded 2 weeks ago today in my former student pulpit of Congregation Beth Israel in Colleyville, Texas, we cannot simply shut our doors, nor our hearts. The welcoming spirit of our congregations and our country must continue to be nurtured. It is all very complex, with innumerable shades of gray, and without easy answers. There is tension and the struggle to be reassured of our safety and security, but we must continue to find a way. We dare not remove our welcome mats. We dare not withhold the best of ourselves. We dare not cease to express our embracing spirit. We dare not place a stumbling block in the path of those desirous of contributing to the success of our communities. Isaac Astor, moments ago, becoming a bar mitzvah, taught us overcoming challenges that include, though are not limited to, indifference, disconnect, apathy, and the inability to distinguish between the intrusive stranger from the promising newcomer are vital to maintaining our community. And Isaac pointed out what it means to be Jewish. The Kotzker, an Hasidic rabbi of 19th century Poland, was asked by his disciples once, "There was much love among the Hasidim. Why not in our time?" The Kotzker replied, "In heaven, there is a sanctuary of love. My teacher, the Berdefischer rabbi, opened this sanctuary for all of humanity. But then the ne'er-do-wells got inside and used that love for trivial purposes. And so the Berdefischer locked up the sanctuary once again." Let us continue to love. Let us continue to keep open our sanctuaries. And let us continue to welcome the newcomer into our lives and into our hearts. Ken Yehi Ratzon, may it be God's will.